So that's a neat little use case that you have for it that I think is interesting.
Now, you think this is that's the sort of thing this is used for more than shutting down spellcasters?
It varies.
Yeah, that's
Some tables will never use it for one and only use it for the other.
right.
So like it just gonna depend a lot on how the table's playing.
Hello, friends. Robert Bevan here, author of the Caverns Creatures series of comedy, fantasy novels, and short stories. With me is Sam West, and today we're talking about the spell Silence. Well done.
Get it? Because they
Yeah, I got
pantomime.
it.
Yeah, because it's yeah. This is a second level spell I put a lot of value in. It's got a 100-foot cast range. 120 feet is a long distance. I just like
Yeah.
to mention that. It's also a ritual spell, which is also neat. So this spell, there's an action to cast. It's got 10-minute concentration. It's an illusion spell. It's for bards, clerics, rangers, circle of the land, desert druids, the undying warlocks, and the fathomless warlocks. They all get access to this. Notably, a lot worse on the warlock options. For the duration, no sound can be created within or pass through a 20-foot radius sphere centered on a point you choose within range. Any creature or object entirely inside the sphere is immune to thunder damage, and creatures are deafened while entirely inside it. Casting a spell that includes verbal components is impossible there.
Hmm. All right. I have a question.
Sure.
Now, all right, I'm in a really long hallway.
Mhm.
I cast Silence in the middle of the hallway. So there's this 40-foot long void of sound, right? Now
Yes.
I'm on the other side, and my targets are way over here on this side. I cast a spell, shoot something at them. Now my voice doesn't go through the silence, right? But my spell does. Is that ever valuable? So
No.
okay.
It. I don't want to say it's never valuable. It's just not often valuable, right? That's kind of a really interesting element of silence. This spell is neat, and it does do a lot of little things like that, where
Mm,
you're like, oh, we can do this discreetly. We can cast the spell and no one can hear it. We can, blow this up and no one will hear it. How useful that is a much bigger question, and it's going to play differently table to table. Some tables don't consider verbal components full stop. Like it's just not an element of spellcasting that's played around with. Somatic verbal material components. It's just like, oh no, you just cast spells and they just happen. Um, a lot of the tables care a lot more about the nitty gritty minutia of it, and this spell cares about the nitty gritty minutia of spellcasting. And if you're engaging with spellcasting with things like counterspell, this is a part of that suite of effects.
yeah.
That is where I think it has a lot of interesting applications, but it has some issues there too because you have to like make sure things can't move because things can just leave the silence if they want to be able to cast spells. You can play around with that. But more often the use cases of this is the breaking and entering, is the sneaking around, is the casting spells from the darkness using dark vision quietly, and then spontaneously out of nowhere, a fireball just explodes at their feet. That's a cool little thing you can do. The fact this is a ritual tag means you're encouraged to play around with it a little bit more, right? Like
Hmm.
if you are in a situation where you have superior dark vision, maybe you're hiding on the rooftop. You're only worried in this, maybe there's like a big speech from villains doing a monologue and you're here to assassinate them. You can
Right.
just sit on the rooftop. It would echo out if you had to say a verbal component, but you'll ritual cast silence there beforehand. They come on out on stage. You'll put yourself in a position where your words won't pass this bubble, but you can still speak. Fireball the ground, they explode and die horribly. No one knows who or where that fireball came from. That's cute. Ungodly niche isn't happening on almost any table though, and that's I think one of the harder issues for this spell is well, what active circumstances do tables want this? How valuable is denying sound? And that is a hard question to answer.
All right, let's see. Who gets this? Bard, cleric, and ranger. All right, who gets pass without trace?
Ranger, druid, I believe.
Yeah, something like that.
Druid.
That's also second level, right?
Yeah, it's plus 10 to stealth checks. So they do
Yeah.
kind of different things.
Oh yeah, I know. I mean, yeah, you're definitely gonna want silence for some things and pass without trace for others, but there is some overlap.
Yes. They go in the same kind of toolbox, right? This is
Yeah.
an infiltration toolbox. A toolbox for We need to get through this wall. We don't want to let the echoing sounds of the pickaxe go through the corridors. Silence it and let the barbarian go to work. And they can do that for hours because you can just keep ritual casting this over and
Right.
over again in the same spot, and eventually, silently, you can dig through things. You can, like I prefaced earlier, stick some dynamite on it. It'll create an explosion, but the sound isn't going to go anywhere. So that's a neat little use case that you have for it that I think is interesting.
Now, you think this is that's the sort of thing this is used for more than shutting down spellcasters?
It varies.
Yeah, that's
Some tables will never use it for one and only use it for the other.
right.
So like it just gonna depend a lot on how the table's playing. I have only I think I've used this out of combat like twice. And I wasn't always that impressed with it, but it was like a neat little safety valve that only was ritual cast. I have cast it when it was super impactful in combat to deny spellcaster their ability to cast spells because someone else could grapple them or they were restrained or something, right?
I mean,
So
20
there
feet is a
is
big radius. I mean,
oh, it's enormous.
if you're out in an open field, sure they can walk out of it, but yeah, if you're indoors or something, there's going to be a lot of rooms that are less than 40 feet wide.
Yeah. You also have to say, are you in that room, right? Do you want to cast spells? Because it is symmetrical,
Yeah,
right? It affects everyone in it. So there is a little more push to that too. I will give you that like there will be environments where it isn't easy to move out of, especially if like something's in a corner. 40 feet is sometimes more than they can move, right? So if
yeah.
they're positioned in such a fashion where they literally have to dash it out of this thing, you are kind of happy with that outcome, even if it isn't, they're locked in there forever. I do think it's a lot better whenever you have some level of overlap where they do get locked in the silence forever, and their entire like ninth level and lower characters or spell slots are just shut off. Like if there's an environment where this can happen to a big bad, they're almost forced to counterspell this because they can't legendary resist it because it's not a
Mm,
save or anything. They just
right.
are silenced. So they have to engage with it on some front or be really debilitated by the potential future options.
Yeah, pretty powerful stuff for a second level spell. And
Why it's really
versatile.
bad on Warlocks because Warlocks sure can't cast it using only second level slots forever. They eventually have to spend third and fourth level, fifth level slots on it, which is sad time.
Yeah. Uh, anything else you got to say about it?
It's
I
neat.
feel
I
that
like it.
we could go on forever. There's a multitude of ways to use this.
I feel like it'd be a lot of niche examples.
Yeah.
And I think like ultimately that's why I rate this spell very highly for its high highs. It is often going to be a tool you just don't have any use for, though. Like, you don't need things to be quiet a lot of the time. Against a
Yeah.
giant, who cares? Like, it's not affecting the encounter at all. A lot of dungeons is not affecting the encounters at all. So I like this more on characters that have the room for it. I like this on clerics. I like this on if you can get this on a wizard or a sorcerer, I like it a lot. Not necessarily sorcerer, on a wizard, I like it a lot. So I'm gonna give this a solid 3. I don't think it's changing the game by any nature, but I like that it plays on a couple different axes. I like that it's flexible. It's just cheap enough. You can use it in some cool environments. If you're getting to the upper tiers, I would try and find ways to get this on your character sheet because it will surprise you from time to time. But it isn't always going to be a fail safe. It's not always going to be able to shut down enemy spellcasters. There's some push and pull and tug with this thing. It does a lot of little things pretty well. It can do some things insanely well. It can also just be not usable. So
I think it's worth a 4 at least. I mean, it's ritual casting, a decent chunk of time, good range. I like a lot about it. I'm giving it a 4.
do it.
Makes me happy. All right. Um, that was our ratings. What do you think, listeners and watchers? What do you think of silence? Let us know down in the comments. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Sam, for joining me today. And yeah, like, subscribe. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.